gives me great pleasure to introduce Andrew McKaskill, newly minted MVP.
Thank you.
Yeah, round of applause for that too.
Hey! And there's the standing
You'll be
ovation.
upstanding. Big round of applause.
Thank you,
All over to Andy.
Hi, everybody. So my name's Andrew McKaskill. I am lead technical architect at Great State. And it is my joy to talk to you today, and I know that sounds a bit weird, about using Umbraco UI Builder to build enterprise business applications. So this is a bit of a story that goes along with this. So I was coming home from a meetup about a month and a half ago, and was talking to a fellow Umbracian, and they said, well, I've bought an agency license for UI Builder, but I haven't used it yet. What do you use it for? And I was like, let me tell you. And so this made me think about how I could explain enterprise business applications. I've been doing enterprise business applications for a long, long time. Before I was in agency world, I was head of software development for a large company that made enterprise business applications. So this is like my bread and butter. So to me, enterprise business applications can really be summed up by looking at a couple of different factors. So first off, it's about, my slides are the wrong way around. That's good. First off, it's secured, right? So not everybody can get access to it behind some kind of authentication wall, whether it's Active Directory or a private one, but it's something. And that goes hand in hand with part two, which is it's for a private audience. Whether that's your employees, usually, because it's an internal-facing application, but it can be any type of group where you just don't want it available for everyone. Business applications usually espouse functionality over form. They don't tend to look pretty, but they tend to get stuff done. That's why they were created. And usually, they're procedural versus informational. I say usually because sometimes it gets a bit blurry when we talk about like employee handbooks or SharePoint sites, for example, but usually they're there to do something. So I have some examples, because I know that's like a bit abstract. So for the last couple of weeks, as I've been going through using various different applications over time, I've taken some screenshots and thought about whether or not these would be good examples. So the first couple I have, actually, I'm a scout leader back in England. This is an application called Compass. And yes, it is this bad. This is what the scouts use to track certification management. So every scout leader has to have certain sets of qualifications, safeguarding, GDPR, first aid. But you'll actually see there's a whole raft of them that you have to have in order to be a qualified scout leader, because they have a duty of care to all of the scouts that are under their control. So they use this system to track and manage all of the certifications for every scout leader in the entire country. Along with that, you have your expenses. This is how I have to file my expenses for scouts. It's not for Scouts headquarters, it's for our local scout group, and it just generates an email that gets sent to the treasurer. But it's a form of business application, and I have to use it every week when I go and buy stuff to put on my scout sessions. In my professional life, I've got a whole bunch of them that I have to use in the agency world as well. I just had to repeat my GDPR certification. Yay! Gotta love it. Booking annual leave, classic example. Booking a meeting room. These are the meeting rooms that are available. They're really nice, actually. These are the meeting rooms that are available in our offices in Bristol. Or everybody's favorite, IT service desk. And yes, this is an actual ticket that I had to fill in because Bitdefender. Anyway, moving on. Worst of all, though, is timesheets. Everybody hates timesheets. This is a timesheet application we use at Great State. It's called Synergist. I don't know, has anybody used Synergist? Oh, one hand, two hands. Oh, sorry, I feel for you. So timesheets are really important. I get it. You need them to be able to know how your projects are doing, whether they're overrunning, to see what you need to be able to bill, but nobody likes filling them in. And in fact, at Great State, We need them so much that we have created what we call the timesheet Olympics. This is not Umbraco Olympics. That would be fun. This is not fun. So every week at 10 a.m. on a Monday, we have a competition to see which departments can get all of their timesheets from the previous week filled in before 10 o'clock. And you get a gold, a silver, or a bronze, depending on how many of your team do or don't manage to fill in their timesheets on time. And if too many of you don't fill them in on time, you get the wooden spoon. It's great. But it is an incentive. So at the end of every quarter, the team that's had the most timesheets filled in on time, the most golds, gets a night out, which is nice. Okay, so I bring up timesheets for a reason. So at Great State, we've just finished 2 projects for Defense Digital and Defense Medical Services, and to help them drive their digital transformation. One is a timesheet application, and one is a ticketing service desk application. So I'm going to walk you through both of these and explain a little bit more about how we came to use them and where we used Umbraco UI Builder. So who are Defense Medical Services? Defense Medical Services manage the training and readiness state of all the medical personnel within the UK Armed Forces. So that's the Navy, the RAF, the Air Force, and the Army. And that includes doctors, nurses, both GPs, specialists, surgeons, dentists, paramedics, medics, even vets, because we do have some vets, because you do have animals that work in the armed forces sometimes. And when they're not deployed, most of these medical professionals also work in the NHS, our National Health Service, in the hospitals. And there are agreements in place that allow the specialist consultants to work there, providing services to the general public, training other medics and doctors, developing new skills, as well as keeping their existing skills current while they're not deployed. Well, with anywhere where you've got an agreement, the doctors are required to tell Defense Medical Services how much time they spend in the NHS and how much time they spend doing military activities. And can anyone guess what they use to hold this data?
Excel.
Oh, nailed it in one. Excel. And then it's emailed. So part of the reason is that they have very specific data, well, they have a number of very specific requirements, which means that they can't use a lot of off-the-shelf solutions. If you have clients that have business applications, they will probably also have very specific requirements. They won't be the same, but they will probably fall into one of these categories. Data storage. For the military, this means the data has to be kept in the UK rather than overseas. Most cloud providers, Umbraco excluded, don't have UK-specific hosting. And since GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, there we go, came in all across Europe, we also have to be much more careful about where we send our data to, who has access to our data, even if it's just the people that are managing the cloud hosting provider. Authentication. Lots of businesses use single sign-on systems to ensure their employees don't have to re-enter usernames and passwords all the time. And not all off-the-shelf software supports every authentication provider. So sometimes employees get left having to make extra usernames and passwords. And this becomes a really big burden to IT, especially for onboarding and offboarding of employees. And because of that, some businesses just refuse to use any piece of software that doesn't talk to their authentication provider. Custom reporting. Defense Medical Services have got this custom unit of measure they call a PA, a programmed activity, instead of hours. And it's different for day shifts and night shifts so that they can correlate how much effort was involved in the amount of time that they spent. And there was a colleague of mine that was telling me that universities sometimes don't, an hour is not an hour. Like an hour is really 40 minutes. And so all the timesheets are different. Whether it's timesheets, whether it's hours, whether it's numbers of miles or CO2 emissions, whatever it is, there will be some specific custom reporting requirements that your clients will probably have that an off-the-shelf package won't necessarily support. And lastly, integrations. Now, there are a lot of cloud packages out there, but some businesses have got data warehouses or analytics platforms that the data has to be sent to that won't be in the cloud. In my previous company, I had to, where are my notes? Here we go. I was installing software in hotels and fitness centers, and it was all on-premise because it needed to talk to the door systems and the turnstiles and the card readers, which were all physical things, and they didn't exist in the cloud. And so that meant that we had to be installed locally as well. So we created them a new app, a new bespoke React single-page application for the consultants to enter their returns data. They could complete their returns, they could see the data coming in, this is all mobile-friendly. They could even add annual leave and long-term service leave if they had it. And that data would then be sent up to Defense Medical Services. Now, the title here is called Turbulence Returns, because we're not allowed to call them timesheets. Turbulence refers to the fact that it's happening over and over and over again, and they're returning the data back. Don't ask me why, but that's what it's called. So this project was going to be hosted in a Kubernetes cluster, secured within Defense Digital. And it was fairly standard design. We have a React single-page application, and it goes to a Postgres database, because Postgres runs very nicely inside Docker containers, inside Kubernetes. And that would bring the data in. But then we needed to be able to access the data to do reporting and view it and so on. And to start with, we looked at this low-code platform called Retool. Now, have any of you ever heard of or used Retool before? A couple of nods. Okay. It looks nice, right? It was chosen because it works natively with Postgres. All of its data is also stored in Postgres. It can be self-hosted, and it comes with a fully supported Docker container and guidance for how to run it inside Docker, inside your own cluster. And it looked like a pretty reasonable choice. The licensing was reasonable for the basic features that we thought we needed. But as we started to build out more of the back office solution, more and more of the features that we wanted, we found out fell into the enterprise category. And when we called Retool to finally get the enterprise licensing cost, we found that there was an additional platform fee if you wanted to self-host. And it would have chewed up 75% of our client's annual support and maintenance budget. And we were just like, that's not going to work. We very quickly looked at some of the other low-code, no-code platforms that were available to us. So within the Ministry of Defense, they also have Oracle Apex, and they have Power BI, both of which could have worked, but they were managed by other departments, and it would have added probably 6 months worth of time to our project. And the whole project was less than 3 months to begin with. So, what to do? UI Builder to the rescue. So it was right around this time when I saw a blog post on the Umbraco blog saying that Construct had become UI Builder, and it was now an officially supported add-on. I'd looked at Construct previously, but I'd never actually had a chance to use it in a project, and I thought, now's the time. So, within about 2 weeks, we had an open source platform with a minimally licensed add-on connected to our custom database, providing us back office access. So you can see here, we have the ability to add and edit our consultants. You can come in, edit all their details, add them in, and connect them up with our many-to-many joins, before many-to-many joins actually existed, to their trusts and their specialties so that they can be tagged and reported correctly. We can get into their timesheet data, and then we can even drill down and look at all of the details underneath. And this was perfect. It was more than enough for what they needed, and it allowed them to get rid of those spreadsheets. And now everything's inside the database. So right around this time came along a second project for Defense Medical Services, this time for the Defense Medical Academy, for a ticketing workflow style tool. So the Defense Medical Academy is responsible for the training of the medics within the Ministry of Defense. And specifically, we were working with EATS, the External Education and Training Support Team. So Defense Medical Academy do run their own courses, but they don't have the specialists available to be able to run every possible type of course that every GP, specialist, nurse needs. They have a bunch of general ones, but not some of the really specific ones. For example, and I found these are from the list of approved courses for this year. We have the Postgraduate Diploma in Aerospace Medicine, currently offered by King's College London. We have Laboratory Diagnosis of Malaria from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And we have Level 2D Diving and Hyperbaric Medicine qualification at DDRC Plymouth. They're not going to have these available at the main Defence Medical Academy. So this tool was for the... this slide. So the EATS team themselves, they support a budget of around about £4 million to deliver these courses throughout the year. They have over 1,000 approved courses that people can choose from. They need to support about 6,000 personnel. For those 6,000 personnel, they get 5,000 applications for training every year. And this is the kicker. In order to support the 5,000 applications, on average, they need 8 emails going backwards and forwards between them and the various people that need to approve the courses. When we started doing the discovery for this project, we mapped out the workflow. That's what the workflow looks like. The group at the top is the applicant, and all the other swim lanes that you see going through there are all the different people in different departments that have to have a touch point on the various applications, either to approve them or to send information to the training provider or back from the training provider, so on and so forth. It's a nightmare. There's hundreds of thousands of emails every year with personal information in them going backwards and forwards. Okay, so we needed a solution. So we identified 2 separate user groups that we needed to deal with. One was the applicants themselves, and one was the administration staff. For the applicants, we designed a nice, new, responsive website for them to enter their applications. It's got a lovely guided journey that helps the applicants work out which form they actually need with simple, easy-to-understand questions, because it's not obvious. The forms previously, by the way, were called the 1797 form. And if you wanted to find them, that's what you had to go and look for. Nothing to do with the year, it's because it's form number 1797 in the massive list of forms that the Ministry of Defence have. So this made it much, much easier to understand which form you're filling out and why you're filling it out. We broke the application form up into multiple steps, crucially with the ability to save in between each step, so that if they realized they needed an additional piece of information, they could save and come back to it later. The form fields themselves were updated to provide additional guidance and validation and to ask for more clarification if needed. And finally, we made a dashboard within there so that the applicants themselves can see not all the progress, because we don't want them knowing how many times it's bouncing up and down between the different people, but at least some of the progress, so they can tell when their application has gone to the decision board, for example, and they can track how long it's going to take. For the admin team, we created the forms using Umbraco forms. So they can come in, they can edit the text, they can add additional guidance, and they can move things around as they need to. The forms in the front-end application are rendered statically at build time using Next.js. And when you hit save on the form, it triggers a webhook, which tells Next.js to invalidate and rebuild the page. Like that. Really cool. Once the form's been submitted, the data goes into our custom database tables. And that's where UI Builder comes in. So we have a UI Builder collection which exposes all of this data organized in different tabs for the users to be able to access, as well as a bunch of other information as well. So for example, the profile information here is being pulled from the member record, and the members are created automatically from the authentication provider. To implement some of the more complex areas, we had to create custom property editors. So here, for example, you can see this file upload access. This is a multiple list, so if you uploaded more and more and more files, you'd get a list of all of them in here. If any of you have used UI Builder, you'd know that's not how UI Builder works. So this is a custom editor that goes out and retrieves that data and then shows it to you. But it's using the Umbraco UI library, and it's in as a custom property editor, so it looks completely seamless. We also had to create a custom workflow engine to manage the transition between the states of the workflow. Again, not something UI Builder supports out of the box, because UI Builder deals with the state of all of the applications at the same time, all of the entities. And trying to create something like this, again, we had to make a custom API that our property editor called down to, retrieve the validation data, and then displayed it for us, so that as you choose which action to go through, we can validate the different states and whether the application is ready to move on to that workflow state. So as part of the application, there's also a number of custom lookup fields that we had to create. Now, if we were just using forms, these would either be hard-coded into the form themselves or perhaps centralized into a pre-value list. Both of those options don't work inside UI Builder because the data is held inside forms. And they're also not very friendly when the data needs to be exported out of the database into a large data warehouse for further analysis. So we created a new lookup table to store the various values and act as our source of truth. We added this UI Builder collection to allow them to come in and quickly add lookup values for things that the code doesn't care about. We don't care how many currencies you want to store or what types of training there are. You can have as many as you want, and they should be able to edit them. They don't need to come back to us to add those. In forms, we added a pre-value data source to then go back to our custom data table and pull that, so that that way the same data here feeds both UI Builder, all the dropdowns, as well as the dropdowns in forms, which also then feeds through to the statically generated website. So everything comes from one place. So this project was able to use much more of Umbraco's power than the previous project, which was great. So in addition to using the integrated user management for our back office users, we also used it for our member logons. So both of them were using Defense Gateway, which is an OAuth provider that the Ministry of Defense and Defense Digital have in order to validate that you are a serving personnel. We used Umbraco Forms to create the application forms, allowing the customer much more flexibility around how the forms were organized and what kind of text would appear on the screen. We used the Content Delivery API to be able to grab all of our content for the different pages and pull them through, as well as the Forms Delivery API to be able to render the forms headlessly in our static application and submit them back. We used webhooks to trigger the Next.js static site revalidation. We used the Event Publisher to trigger scheduled notification workflows by looking for things that happen on a regular basis. Nope. Here we go, we're getting there. Custom editors allowed us to create the custom editors that you saw within UI Builder, and because they're all integrated within the way that in your settings area, you can go in and you can create your custom data types and register them with your custom property editors, and then connect them into UI Builder. And then we were also able to use other third-party packages like Usync for moving our content up and down between our environments, and Contentment to provide more advanced data pickers that supported advanced search, pagination, and other data sources as well. So where's this going in the future? In the future, this site will be extended to support a course catalog. So they want to have an applicant-facing course catalog, which would allow the applicants to be able to see what courses are available, as well as they now have a continuous professional development, CPD, budget. Everyone gets £125 a year that they can spend on whatever they want to continue their professional development. But nobody knows how much they've spent. So we want to be able to track that and report that back inside the dashboard for the end users. We also want to integrate with the Defense Data Analytics Platform to allow real-time reporting of all of the budgets that have been used for each of the single services, so that they don't have to create more spreadsheets from our exported data that they then forward on to their two-star generals who don't want to go and look inside Umbraco. So what does this mean for all of us? Where does this leave us? Well, UI Builder fundamentally changes the type of things that you can do inside Umbraco, and particularly about Umbraco's value proposition. Excel spreadsheets are still being used everywhere, and businesses are still struggling with digital transformation because it's not just a one-stop, hey, presto, we're digital, and that's it. In fact, this application form used to be paper, then was changed into a digital form in a SharePoint site. That's actually what we were translating. So in fact, we're like the second generation digital transformation for this particular piece of work. So here are some of the key benefits that you could get from using UI Builder to deal with your enterprise business problems. You get a robust, feature-rich enterprise solution which meets your regulatory compliance and security needs. You get exact alignment with your business processes, rather than trying to shoehorn yourself into the processes that your off-the-shelf package thinks you should be using. You minimize cost through using an open source CMS platform. You maximize your efficiency, both of the development team who's working on getting a rapid time to market for your solution, but also from your customers, making it easy for them to carry out common data manipulation tasks and freeing up their valuable time to do the things that matter most. And it reduces and mitigates risk by providing a simple way of accelerating and updating your digital transformation within the enterprise. Well, we actually have time for questions after this, so I'll come back to that one. And that's me. So I've been making enterprise business applications for actually I think it's more than 20 years. It's kind of scary. At Great State, we've been making, well, last year I was here, I talked about My Navy, which was an enterprise business application that we created for the Navy as a people empowerment tool. And this year I'm here talking about Defense Medical Services. Thank you very much.